wanted to ask you a question I've had since we watched Mr. McMahon. So in the documentary, Vince McMahon says something that we've presumed, he said it to Brian Solomon 20-something years ago, that Dusty Rhodes was the first pick, the first choice to be the face of WWF on the national stage.
Yes.
We don't know exactly when in 1983 that happened. I mean, Dusty did work the Garden in 83, but we don't know if that's when it happened. Towards the end of 83 is when Vince approached Harley Race, tried to get him as NWA champion to no-show Starrcade to drop the belt to whoever the WWF champion would have been at that moment. Didn't work out. But Dusty turned him down. Vince said, and you have to think that he believes it because he said it like this, Dusty turned him down because he didn't believe in it. He didn't believe in Vince, he didn't believe in the vision, he didn't believe in going national, going against the NWA, whatever it was, the way Vince says it and believes it is Dusty didn't believe in it.
Yeah.
So much has been made over the years about the polka dots and how it was a shot at Dusty because he was the booker for Jim Crockett Promotions, the only national company to go head-to-head with Vince to the very end, the prime competitor, whatever it may be. Looking back now, everything from Ted DiBiase's servant being Virgil, Dusty Rhodes' real name, obviously, to even Akeem. They made the one-man gang the African Dream, not the American Dream, the African Dream. Even things like in NWA, there were the Superpowers. In WWF, there were the Mega Powers. But of course, the polka dots. Looking back now and knowing what we know, do you think the polka dots were a rib on Dusty because of his role in Crockett Promotions? Or was it because he had the opportunity, Vince gave him an opportunity, and he said, I don't believe in it?
Oh, and Dusty's words were not, under any circumstances, to Vince, I don't believe in it.
No, that's the way Vince heard it. That's the way Vince sees it.
That's Vince's impression.
Right.
And see, a lot of these things can be, and you've raised a very good point, and it probably, because it was so much, he didn't ever take that much time to do that many different little fucking ribbish things to anybody else that came from the other company, right? But Dusty. But at the same time, he still later on gave him a job in NXT or FCW, what became NXT, training guys. And, he had respect for him. I think, personally, because you've seen the examples of a lot of these guys' memories of that time that did this stuff for 40 years and never got away from it, and they remember things happening, but the chronology or the timeline or whatever is sometimes skewed. And I'm thinking that Vince McMahon Jr., when he had the plans and when he was first starting to formulate, it's not like he bought the company from his dad in 82 and then had the idea, well, here's what I'm going to do with it, right? Can we agree on that? He had these ideas of what he wanted to do first.
He was sitting in Cape Cod promoting concerts, thinking about what he wanted to do to wrestling.
And so when he saw Dusty, and remember, he also, it said, unlike his father, he would have never taken the belt. Well, not never, but he wouldn't have taken the belt off superstar Billy Graham when his father did.
He said that well after the fact, of course, yes.
Well, but, he wouldn't have, because the first thing he did practically was fucking find a way to get rid of Bob Backlund. So, but at the same time, Billy, by that point, age and things and mental were catching up, right? So what I'm saying is, I bet you, and then you can respond with whatever you're going to say, but let me at least make some of this make sense. I'm thinking Vince had the idea for Dusty 80, sometime earlier on when he saw the flamboyance in the Garden, when they did the matches with Billy Graham, when Dusty was working up and down, going back and forth from Florida because of the father's relationship with Eddie Graham. But then I think he probably at some point, maybe going into 83, had made some kind of pitch to Dusty and not told him everything he was going to do, because then Dusty would have, warned some people before, he would have. But I think he probably wanted to make Dusty a big offer to come in and was thinking that it would evolve into that. But at the same time, Dusty was trying, he couldn't be the booker for Vince, because Vince was, Vince had bookers in those days, but Vince was still calling shots. So I think Dusty, having worked so much in Georgia, so much in Florida for Eddie Graham, getting an opportunity, seeing something going on in the Carolinas, I think he saw that he could be the movie producer, baby, down there where he'd always be underneath somebody else's thumb with Vince. Does that sound fair?
It does, and if you go back and watch, it does and it doesn't. If you go back and watch any of the 77, 78 Billy Graham, Dusty Rhodes matches at the Garden, everyone always talks about how smitten Vince was internally with the look of Billy Graham, but he also was for Dusty. Look at the glee on Vince's face.
Yeah.
When Dusty's cutting those promos in front of the Garden crowd with him.
Because he wasn't in love with Dusty's look, but his personality was so big, he was in love with the personality. That he wanted the entertainer. That's what Vince wanted.
See, the question comes down to 83. Vince buys the company in June of 82, takes over completely by June of 83. I'm looking at my book right here, Wrestling in the Garden by Scott Teal and J. Michael Kenyon. We talked about it a long time ago on the show. Trying to see when Dusty was in the Garden. Dusty was there, because I know he was there in 83.
Well, while you're looking for that, I'll make the point that
May 23rd, 83, Dusty Rhodes beat Samoan number 3, 9 minutes and 10 seconds. Let me see if it's there again.
See, remember at the time, Dusty was already developed. He was a star. Hulk was developing. He had been a heel for Vince Sr., obviously, but at that point, remember, Hulk's promos were not what they would become a couple of years later. And when he started really developing in Japan and the AWA, that's when he started getting on I'm sure, on Vince's radar as somebody to take seriously. And then it could be that, then Vince had a choice. Do I want the entertainer and try to make him get in shape, or do I want the fucking giant muscle guy and try to make him more entertaining?
You see, the thing that's interesting, too, he's there in May of 83. June of 83 is when Vince has full control. And you have to think at that point, Vince is already thinking, how do I get the belt off Backlund? I can't put it on Snuka. There's no way.
Yeah.
So,
Dusty could have been there, because if Vince didn't take full control, Vince Sr. was still working with Eddie Graham.
Right, Eddie Graham was the last outside promoter, outside of Japan, I should say, but outside American promoter to book someone on a Garden show. He got J.J. Dillon on a show in the spring of 84 against Tito Santana. That's the last non-WWF wrestler, other than Japanese wrestlers, to appear on a Garden show in forever.
Yep. And you have to think and I'm sorry, but just if Eddie Graham wouldn't live another full year. If he had, there would have been something going on early on with Florida and the WWF.
But again, Eddie Graham and Dusty Rhodes, we know the relationship wasn't as strong in 83 and 84 as it had been 10 years earlier or 9 years earlier, whatever it may be. But if Dusty, it always appeared to me in 83 he was looking at his options. Of course, he booked Starrcade. He's not even on the show. He booked Starrcade for Jim Crockett, building a relationship with Jim Crockett. He's booking Florida for Eddie Graham. Whatever was happening in Florida, he was there to see it. He shows up in Mid-South in 83 at the end, saying that Mid-South Wrestling is going to be booking him. And then he's not really there ever again. But obviously him and Bill Watts had a long relationship. Georgia's falling apart at that point under Ole Anderson without Jim Barnett. It's interesting that Vince would offer this to Dusty. If he offered it that early and Dusty said no, because also when was it that Vince sent Steve Taylor, the photographer, to an AWA show to contact Hogan? That was right after this.
Yeah, and backing up to Dusty in Mid-South, at that point, Dusty wasn't, I don't think, ever going to go to Mid-South as a roster regular and make Homa, but for Houston, for the Superdome, for I'm sure he had in mind Oklahoma City and Tulsa. I don't remember if he ever made those towns, but even Eddie Graham, a lot of times it would tell like Kevin Sullivan, I got to get Dusty out every once in a while so I can get somebody else over. Right. So he'd book him to New York because it made Dusty a bigger star, but it also, for a few days, somebody else could be on top down there. Right. And Paul Bosch would love to have Dusty in Houston. And he did make Superdome shows going back to the early Superdome shows because he was a big star.
Him and Andre won a tag tournament at the Superdome.
I think what Dusty was trying to do was set himself up where he was the booker and the star in a certain territory, but was of the traveling, Andre the Giant, or in the day, Ernie Ladd, or top star category where he could go and make the biggest towns in the other territories where if he was just booking and working in Florida on top, but making the Superdomes and making big shows in the Carolinas or Madison Square Garden or whatever, you're talking about in those days being able to make better than $250,000 a year. And that's today almost $1 million. So that's what he was at the very least trying to do. But booking the biggest company was his goal, which is why he was, I think, went to the Carolinas. And then that was, at first he would still make, like in 84, he was still coming to Mid-South. That's when we worked with him in the Dome. He was still making some other shots in major territories not affiliated with Vince, but he was so busy in the Carolinas that he had to cut back on that because he's making a fortune over there after setting it up in 84. By 85 on, I told you in March of 86, when the Midnight and I made 1 week like $4,500 a piece, because it was our first run with the Rock and Roll Express, and there were some big towns. I saw Flair's check, and he was in every town with us, and his was 13 grand for that week. So he was working with Dusty. So that means Dusty got same money, plus he was getting paid as booker. So I don't have any idea, $15,000, $20,000 fucking week equal to in today's money, as they say. A lot of fucking money.
So again, going back to the question, Vince knew him. It wasn't like he was the booker for a competitor and Vince had never met him. They knew each other. They got along in the past. Vince brings him in and puts the polka dots on him. Now you have to think if Dusty Rhodes had taken Vince's offer in 1983-84, there would have been no polka dots. There was no need for the polka dots in 89 either. But he did it. Do you think it was because of Dusty's role with Jim Crockett Promotions? Or do you think Vince has a bug up his ass in some kind of way, even if it's not something where he hates the person, because Dusty turned him down? Vern Gagne turned down Vince and laughed at him. And Vince destroyed the AWA.
Yeah.
Dusty Rhodes turned down Vince, and it doesn't sound like he laughed at him.
No, Dusty would have done that. Again, I'm sure that Vince didn't tell him, Dusty, I'm going to take over every territory and run national, because then Dusty would have told somebody when the, war, that's what Vince told me he was going to do. And he never went on record as saying that Vince told him beforehand, because then everybody also would be like, why didn't you tell us? But I think that probably, Vince had a bug up his ass. And by the time 1989 came, not only was it, as we've talked about, Dusty was older and bigger and, slower, and he needed the history of being the American Dream from the day to really get over fully with an audience. But besides that, Vince had established the Hulk Hogan model and then the bodybuilders, and then, there was no bringing even Dusty in and not doing something to make it, kind of hokey because of, that's the pattern that Vince had set for the previous 5-6 years. Here's who we push, and oh, here's the fat guy. I mean, Sapphire, that was a rib too.
Everything was a rib on him, even if it worked.
And I'm not knocking poor Juanita. I'm saying it was, the pairing was a bit of a rib.
When did you first meet her, Sapphire, Juanita Wright?
She had to be at one or more of the WFIA conventions, didn't she? So, because I had never been to,
right?
Yes, she lived in St. Louis. I had never been to St. Louis, but until we went to for Crockett or actually, I'm sorry, we were booked out of Dallas and went for Bulldog Bob Brown and the gang in '85. But I know she was at least at one of the WFIA conventions, the fan conventions. So 78, 79, 80, somewhere around there. And, she's a wonderful person, but they just completely gimmicked Dusty up to within almost unrecognizability of himself, a drastic change, and then let him keep his name. But here he is.
But there's the thing. Vince McMahon always says everything's about what's best for business, and that really means what's best for his business, but it doesn't always appear that that's the fact. Dusty Rhodes came in doing really stupid vignettes, but you get past that, wearing a tie-dyed shirt and no polka dots, and started getting a reaction, and then all of a sudden they put the polka dots all over him. It was unnecessary. It didn't help him get over. Like, it doesn't lend any... there's no argument that says the polka dots lent something to Dusty that would help him get over. It was just something applied to him because they wanted to embarrass him. I mean, that's really the only...
Well, and now, see, I wasn't there then. So was it Vince's idea, or was it one of his brain trust at the time that may have been like, Dusty, who knows? And they sold Vince on it because you could, well, Vince, he's old and he's big and he needs to be entertaining or whatever.
But polka dots, again, no one gets over with polka dots, but he did as well as you could with it. But again, knowing what we know now, and you brought up Sapphire, I forgot about that. Everything they did to Dusty. And
Sapphire had polka dots.
Everything, that's right, she did. She had like a polka dot outfit that he wore they wore matching outfits.
He wore, wasn't it? He wore yellow with black polka dots, and she wore black with yellow polka dots, or some other way. I don't.
Oh no, they went out there at times wearing the exact same, color scheme, polka dot scheme, whatever you would call it. But again, knowing what we know now, and looking at everything as a whole, Virgil, Ted DiBiase's servant, the African Dream, the polka dots, Sapphire. Is it about Jim Crockett Promotions? Or is it about, all right, you didn't believe in me before, you didn't want to come with me in 1983, now you're here, I'm going to have some fun with you.
Yeah, it looks, boy, you've made a heck of a case there, counselor.
We have really good lawyers that I get to listen to at work a lot. So I
you have been taking some notes. I would have to say guilty now that you've laid the case out in that fashion.
All right, there's the first conviction of Vince McMahon in 2024, ladies and gentlemen. But hey, real quick,
more to come,
Jim. If Dusty had taken the offer, if that had happened today, do you think he would just be going crazy, drinking the Orgain, trying to get in the shape, get the protein in him, make sure he has the Vince McMahon look?
Well, I believe he would have, because I think that, let's face it, Dusty wasn't one to do all of the Diana Ball and the Decadurabalin and all of that type of thing that was going on in the 80s. Dusty would have wanted to drink a delicious milkshake. And that's right. The way now that you can do it. You can get all your protein. You don't need to go and wrestle a steer to the ground and take a Bowie knife and slice some meat off the carcass and gnaw on it to get your protein. You can do it with our friends over at Orgain. And I tell you, Brian, I hate to say it again. I have to apologize again. I had confused the issue when Orgain first came on. I said they're a delicious 30-gram protein shake. Tastes like a delicious chocolate milkshake you'd get down at the Dairy Freeze or wherever. And in addition, it grows hair. And you quickly pointed out that, no, this is not to grow hair. It's Orgain. So, other than having to shave my palms now, I've noticed that it's true. It doesn't grow hair. However, I'll tell you what, folks, you want to eat better. You want to be healthier feeling and have better energy and etc. That all the real nutrition and wholesome ingredients give you instead of this prepackaged crap that you get at the store. I just had a Hostess apple pie for the first time in 20 years the other day, Brian.
Really? Why?
Well, that's what I was asking myself the day after. Because instead of loading myself up with all the sugar and the carbohydrates and everything, if I drank an Orgain 30-gram protein shake, it has all 9 essential amino acids. And you need your amino acids to eat up all the bad stuff. It gives you energy to keep you going. It provides muscle support and recovery, maintains a healthy lifestyle, manages hunger, and promotes healthy weight management in combination with diet and exercise. I'm going to get to the diet and exercise part soon. But in the meantime, I'm getting convenient, real nutrition with only 1 gram of sugar per serving and made without any soy ingredients. There is no soy sauce in this. I found out the hard way when I poured it over sushi. It doesn't go with sushi, folks.
No, don't even bring up such a disgusting thought. Ladies and gentlemen, start your day in the middle of your day. At the end of the day, you just need to pick up whatever it is.
Just whatever time.
A delicious chocolate fudge protein shake, 30 grams of protein. I've been drinking one in the morning every day, and I'm very happy with it.
And Orgain's founder, Dr. Andrew Abraham. I saw him on an infomercial. He was selling crystal balls.
No, he wasn't. Why would you say that? No, crystal balls.
Maybe it was Dr. Abraham Andrew that was on that. But anyway, he believes that real nutrition has the power to make a difference in people's lives, and that's why he founded Orgain, to create foods and beverages that offer better nutrition for people everywhere, not just limited to some kind of gymnasium or fitness clinic. Now, even if you're a fat fuck, you can drink one of these and feel better about yourself. Probably just one ain't going to do you any good, but you'll feel better about yourself.
Start with one.
If you do it every day, pretty soon you might. You know what Ronnie Garvin used to say? He was sitting in a gym one time, and this big fat guy came in. And he said, "Holy shit, look at how fat you are." And the guy said, "I know." And Ronnie said, "When's the last time you saw your dick?" And the guy said, "I don't know." And Ronnie said, "Why don't you dye it?" And the guy said, "Well, what color is it now?" See, you do not want to be like that guy.
What?
You want to put healthy things inside your body. And right now,
it's the worst Orgain story I've ever heard of.
Orgain 30-gram protein shakes are available at Costco or at Orgain, ORGAIN.com. And if you want to get in on the delicious protein-packed nutrition today, then head to Orgain.com/JCE, and you can use the code JCE for 20% off your entire order. Orgain.com/JCE, 20% off with that promo code JCE.